Hello, you're watching Transbrations. I'm Nahshondion. This month, we're celebrating Women's History Month. Today's special guest is Tunisia Offray. She's a Renaissance woman and boss lady and is the co-founder at Shepherd's Door Domestic Violence Resource Center, servicing victims and survivors of domestic violence in the Los Angeles County area for more than 17 years. Shepherd's Door mission is to break the cycle of domestic violence through relationship education, financial literacy, youth violence prevention education, support groups, and direct rescue intervention. Shepherd's Door has created a haven for domestic violence survivors and a network to encourage women helping women reach and succeed in their potential and maintain a lifestyle balance. In 2009, Tunisia founded Women Wealth Warriors. The platform was created to support women entrepreneurs and women in business. Tunisia is also the owner of Prestige Insurance and Financial Services and an executive producer and the mother of 4. You have 3 daughters. How do you instruct your daughters to avoid violent and abusive men?
Ooh, a lot of talking to. Unfortunately, they've seen me go down this route because their fathers were also abusive, so they've seen a lot, sadly, but it's just the truth, right? So a lot of it they've learned from watching mom. And it's funny the different routes that they each have taken. My oldest daughter is very aggressive. She's taken on the ain't no nigga, she'll beat a nigga up type. That's her thought process. And I'm like, listen, constantly talking to her, that's not how you want to be. You want to avoid the relationship like that. Yeah, but she's very confrontational. But I understand where it comes from. She feels she needs to protect herself because she doesn't want to go through what she's seen her mommy go through, right? And then my 18-year-old daughter reminds me too much of me pre the abuse, extremely passive. But she's almost afraid of me.
You said she's afraid of you?
She's afraid of men.
Oh, of men. Oh.
Yeah, so like dating is hard for her. She's hasn't really had a boyfriend. She's awkward. But she doesn't necessarily feel safe.
Is this the dancer?
This is the dancer. Yes. So we're trying to work through those issues. And the little baby, we're trying to see what it's gonna look like for her. I mean, really, she's seen, I would say, the least because she was a baby when I was with her father. So she doesn't really remember his violence towards me. She just knows that he's a very angry individual. So I do feel like she does have some type of fear. She has a lot of social anxiety as a child, which I hate that any little kid should have to have that. So yeah, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm very honest and I'm very transparent with my girls. We're very, very close. We're almost like all 3 best friends. And I just tell them the truth, relationships are hard and people are hard to navigate. But I try and give them some of the tools that I wish someone would have given me, like, be careful who you're out with, remain in control. Don't go alone with people. And sometimes the most comfortable situations can be the most harmful situations. Because you think you know somebody and you don't. So it's just really trying to teach them the game of life, so that they don't have the same experiences we've had.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Pardon me?
That's all we can do.
Yeah, that's all you can do. Yeah. Earlier on, two situations, you referenced your parents' relationship of them being together for over 40-something years. And so I want to go back to that. And you said you never saw them argue. And so in the late 70s or the early 80s, my mom, she had shot at my father after he allegedly had cheated with our neighbor and had a baby. He had a baby with our neighbor named Shirley. Her name was Shirley Taylor. Hey, Shirley, I know you and your daughters is watching because I told y'all I was going to be doing an interview and mention you. So I have a half sister. Remember I told you I have 2 half sisters.
Yes.
One half sister, I helped raise her, and Lachelle Taylor is my other half sister with my father, Milton. I've never met her. I've talked to her once or twice through social media and stuff. And, she said, it's the past, let it go and and it's the past. But at the same time, it ruined my parents' relationship because my mother ended up, when she shot at him, she didn't hit him, but she ended up divorcing him. And my father died a few years after that or whatever. So, not to place blame, on her mother or whatever, but what happened with her mother and my father, ruined the family that he was building with my mother. And so the reason why I brought that up was because for over 100 years, my family and community have been plagued with domestic violence. When my mother told me that about a decade ago that she had shot at my father, my first thing was, well, where did you get a gun at? And I shouldn't have been surprised because, you know, other family members had guns, but
Yeah.
I don't think I was, you know, on the scene yet. I don't think I was born when that happened or whatever. But then at the same time, you know, my mother's a Jehovah's Witness. You know, she's this God-fearing person. You know, she presents herself to be a very, you know, peace-loving, kind, respectful person. But, you know, she's shooting at my daddy. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it made me look at her differently. And I'm happy that she told me, you know, she's a human and everything, but it's just not something that I would have been expecting to hear, you know, once
Yeah.
I was like 35 years old. You know,
Yeah.
it was just like, you did what? You know,
Yeah.
were the police called? What happened to the like what was the result? Like, you know, and
Exactly. Give me the tea. Yes.
right. You, I mean, don't just get like, you know, I think she said that it hit it hit a TV, the bullet or whatever. Sorry. So what do you attribute your parents' respect for each other to? That they, you know, like for me, and you know, I had my grandparents, they slept in different bedrooms and Altadena and stuff, and there was constantly, you know, arguing and stuff. But my grandfather, he had another baby with, you know, a woman in Blythe, and at one time, me and my mama, you know, we caught him at the Roseville Motel with the woman, and you know, my mama ran home, told my grandma who was blind, you know, so that was some more, it was some more drama. You know, I guess it's definitely could say that my mother hates cheaters. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
put
Yeah.
put a bullet in your ass if she can.
Well, I'm just saying.
But a lot of women will.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, you don't play with a person's heart. That's why I say that's one thing you just don't play with. With my parents, I think it's really just the overall upbringing and the family dynamics that they both come from, right? So, like I said, in our family structure on both sides, really my mother's very heavy. My father, not so much because my grandmother was a single mom. She had a rough life growing up, but because he saw his mother struggle so much, he loved his mom. He realized like he didn't want
And
that.
she was from New Orleans too.
He was from New Orleans too. Yes, he didn't want that for whoever he was with. My father is very rooted in family. Period. In the story, case closed. And so was my mom. So I think that common denominator that they both have was the reason why our family structure was really preserved that way. And now it's funny because they tell me now, yeah, they have some drag out arguments, but we never knew. They did not argue around us, and they did not create a contentious household. So we never had that in our household. So it was foreign to me. I didn't even know that even existed. You know what I mean? Like I had no clue. And I'm kind of happy that that's not the childhood that I've had.
Violence as a teenager. I was 16 years old, very unsure, extremely insecure about myself, but I come from a very loving family, middle class family, mother and father. Never heard my family or my mother ever argue, or my father ever argue a day in my life. Even now I'm 40, still never really heard them argue. We were a very loving, very spiritual, religious family, Southern family from New Orleans. And I was moved to California at the age of 8. And coming here, I didn't really know my place. I felt like I was kind of rooted from everything I knew, which was my cousins and my grandparents, and the love that I felt and the protection that I felt in New Orleans. So coming to California was a big change for me. And at the time, I didn't realize that that insecurity that I was feeling was the result of that whole move that we did. So fast forward to me being in high school. I was a cute little girl, long ponytails, really skinny. I wasn't the sexy girl. I wasn't the big boobs, big butt that all the teenage boys liked. I wasn't her. I was the cute, really quiet, very innocent, insecure, long little ponytails, still wore braces, looked like a little bitty girl. That was Tunisia. And all the boys would say, with a group of friends, oh, she's fine, or she's sexy, but you're cute. And that's what I was known as. So all of a sudden, a boy took interest in me in high school. He was the bad boy.
What makes me sad is that's not the childhood that I gave my kids. So I have a lot of mommy guilt. And I do feel like I overcompensate for it by doing and giving them so much. I do say that, like, Tunisia, you know, they spoiled as brats. But I think that's why I did that, because I feel so guilty that they didn't get to have what I have, because I'm still very close to my daddy. Straight when I first got pregnant, it happened to me, I went straight to my daddy. I'm very close to my dad and always maintain that closeness with him. And it's almost like I wish I could find someone like my dad. And I wish there could be a man that I trust the way that I trust my father. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that's not my relationship with my dad. But unfortunately, it's been the relationships that I've had with men. And it's been the relationships that my kids have seen me have with men. So that part makes me sad. But I do hope that my education that I give them and the work that they see that I do will deter them from creating some of the same cycles that I've kind of created with my life, you know? Yeah.
Okay. Just, you know, mentioning Louisiana, I forgot to tell you that I also have family roots in Louisiana. My father's mother's mother, Beatrice Shiloh Anderson, she was from Opelousas, Louisiana.
Where the heck is that at?
Opelousas, it's a little north of New Orleans.
Okay.
St. Martin's Parish, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually in the general area where that movie 12 Years a Slave. I forgot the guy's name the character was based on, but the movie 12 Years a Slave, the plantation was in that general area.
Oh wow.
It's near Opelousas, Louisiana. North, I believe it's a little northeast. I think it starts with an A. I can't pronounce it. Avioyalles Parish. Avowallet. I can't pronounce it, but I can kind of spell it. Anyway, perpetrators are not intimidated by a piece of paper. They're not intimidated even by the law. That's a quote that you said after Amy Harwick's murder in February of 2020.
Yes. That's very true. The Amy Harwick story was one that's really stuck with me because I felt like our lives were very parallel with what she was experiencing, what I was currently at that moment in my life experiencing with my youngest child's father. He is an ex-basketball player and a popular person. And because of that, you know, he was given privileges of not being held accountable, so to speak, you know. And Amy herself, you know, this guy was able to evade the law several times because of how the society looked at her, right? She was a sex therapist. And because she was a sex therapist and she was very pretty and very sexy and talked about sex, is almost like, you know,
I'm not laughing, definitely not laughing at her, but just, you know, just
it's true. That's how I was like, oh, then, you know, she deserved it. So I almost feel like she did everything right as it pertains to trying to get help. She did everything right. She got restraining orders. There was multiple police reports of his stalking and abuse, and the law never held him accountable. And she knew that her demise would be at his hands. She was very clear about that. She said it to several friends. So when she died, everybody knew exactly who to go to. And that's similar how I felt with my youngest child's father. And that's a scary place to be when someone doesn't take no for an answer.
Cops say Dr. Harwick's former boyfriend, Gareth Pursehouse, threw her from the third-floor balcony of her Los Angeles home. In this photo obtained by Inside Edition, Dr. Harwick is seen out with girlfriends last Friday, celebrating Galentine's at a burlesque show. One friend tells Inside Edition that she received a message at 1:05 a.m. from the therapist asking her to text the photo as a keepsake. 10 minutes later, she was pushed off the balcony at her home in the Hollywood Hills. In these court papers, filed by Dr. Harwick for restraining orders, she claims a long history of violence at the hands of Gareth Pursehouse. In 2011, she alleged Pursehouse choked me, suffocated me, pushed me against walls, kicked me, slammed my head into the ground. In 2012, she accused him of physically pulling me out of car. I got a bloody nose from his roughness. The most recent restraining order expired 2 weeks ago.
Jealousy can become dangerous.
Domestic violence counselor Tunisia Offray.
For whatever reason, this this perpetrator looks at this victim as their property, and meaning you're never going to get away from me. And that's the mindset of a lot of perpetrators. So they will wait it out.
Creepy video shows the suspect on a flight 4 years ago holding a toy bear and a box of Ritz crackers.
I'm going to rinse you apart.
I've experienced domestic violence and abuse. I never experienced heavy stalking the way that I did after leaving her father. I didn't even know that that can exist to that magnitude. So that creates a whole another level of trauma when you never ever feel safe, you know, and you know this person can get away with it. So restraining orders are almost laughable because when you violate them, they're not considered a felony. They're only considered a misdemeanor. So that's why perpetrators are not afraid of a piece of paper, because they know they're not going to jail for violating that piece of paper. It isn't until they actually inflict harm on you that there's consequences. And usually by then it's too late because the person is either experiencing some severe, you know, physical harm or dead. So our system, again, is not preventative. It's just responsive. And yeah, that's a very scary place to be.
According to the LA Times, Harwick and Pursehouse had shared a home about a decade ago for a couple of years. After they broke up, she twice applied for restraining orders against him. The last one expired 2 weeks ago. Access has obtained Amy's temporary restraining order against Pursehouse from 2012, where she claims he was violent with her, saying, quote, "He has suffocated me, punched me, slammed my head on the ground, kicked me." Amy claimed he also sent her threatening texts saying, "Things will get worse." Tunisia Offray is with the Shepherd's Door Domestic Violence Resource Center.
Perpetrators are not intimidated by a piece of paper. They're not intimidated, not even by the law. They don't believe in anyone controlling them. They want to be in control.
Offray says restraining orders usually don't work because they're designed to respond, not to prevent.
Usually when something happens, it's too late. You know, like in Amy's instance, she's gone. There should have been a consequence in the beginning, not after something happens.
Tunisia adds, by the way, you can apply to renew a restraining order 6 months before it expires if you can prove your life is in danger. But she says Amy probably didn't know that she could do it.
In the first 7 days of the LA County stay-at-home order, the number of domestic violence cases increased significantly before leveling off. The co-founder of a domestic violence resource center is concerned about where those victims will go now. This was in reference to you, and you were interviewed for Channel 7. It was Channel 7. Yeah.
Okay, Channel 7.
How did you respond to the emergencies?
I was so angry. Actually, that interview you're talking about sparked a response from the governor to actually put something in place to help victims. Because during COVID, when you lock a victim in the house with their perpetrator, and because everything was shut down, you give them no escape and nowhere to go, right? Shelters were not taking new people in because of the state, you know, the whole COVID thing. We already have a small number of shelters anyway compared to the number of victims that we get coming through and within the system. There's more animal shelters than there are DV shelters, period. So the governor was praying, oh yeah, 1,000%. Yes. I
shouldn't be surprised as much as they love animals.
Just saying, they don't love victims. That's how it works.
The shade.
Oh, the governor's running around doing these conferences. Oh, we're doing all these, you know, housing for the homeless. And I'm like, well, hold on. Why is everyone ignoring the housing for DV survivors or DV victims who are fleeing? Because you can't put a DV victim in a regular homeless shelter. She'll be easily found that way. Could we create the same things that we're creating for just the general homeless population and do the same thing for DV victims?
Now, other news for people who may be experiencing violence, reaching out is often one of the most difficult things to do. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it appears getting help has become even harder. And that's why some community advocates want more to be done to help domestic violence victims. The I-Team's Lolita Lopez goes to the county for answers.
Received a call from a victim who's literally in her car with her kids, no place to go, seeking shelter, leaving an abusive relationship.
Tunisia Offray talked to us from her nonprofit organization, Shepherd's Door Domestic Violence Resource Center.
It's a little challenging for us.
Tunisia says the woman she talked to contacted her by email.
They don't always have phones. That's why being able to physically come to the location has always been a great way to help service.
As the I-Team first reported, in the first 7 days of the LA County stay-at-home order, the number of domestic violence cases increased significantly before leveling off, according to LAPD data. The concern for Tunisia, where will victims go?
A wait for a shelter could go anywhere from 24 hours to 2 weeks. That process is already difficult before COVID-19. And I would like to see some temporary shelters go up for DV victims.
The county's Domestic Violence Council and the Department of Public Health tell the I-Team there are ongoing efforts to locate overflow housing in Los Angeles. We also got a list of the active domestic violence shelters in the county.
Hi, my name is Sophie, and I'm calling to see.
This week, the I-Team called all 18 shelters in the county that are supposed to be open. 6 shelters told us they continue accepting people, doing health screenings or asking specific health questions over the phone. 3 shelters told us they are too full to take in new people. 3 shelters say they are not taking people due to COVID-19.
Packing bags for our clients.
Tunisia says while her work has been challenging, the community continues to step up, sending donations for those making the brave decision to leave their abusers.
That is a very scary thing to have to do in such uncertain times.
And she stresses that there is help. Of course, if you're in an emergency, you're asked to call 911. But there's also the LA County's domestic violence hotline number. It's 24/7 and confidential. You can get answers to questions about legal service and restraining orders. There's also the national domestic violence hotline numbers, and we want to put those on your screen right now so you can take a look. Advocates also give us this advice. For family and friends who think that a loved one may be experiencing domestic violence, they ask you to reach out to them and ask yes or no answers to them. Also, maybe create a safe word. So if that word is used, that person needs help. Back here alive, Tunisia tells me that the woman with her children in that car have still not found a shelter at last check. Lolita Lopez, NBC4 News. Guys, back to you.
And so after I did that interview, voila, magically, like 30 days later, there was an answer to that request, and they did put some money and funding into creating something similar that they have for housing for DV victims during COVID. Yeah. And thanks to Rihanna too. She gave I think $100 million, a crazy amount of money towards DV that also helped to fund housing for DV victims during that time.
Wow. So, and that was going to be one of my questions. Is domestic violence addressed enough in our community? And you said, there's more resources for, animal shelters. Like, that's a revelation. The question was going to be, do domestic violence centers receive enough funding? Obviously they don't, because you just referenced that.
No, not at all. We're the most underfunded initiative out of everything. Like, there's way more money for homelessness. There's way more money for breast cancer. There's way more money for autism. Not to say none of these things don't matter. They do. But I feel like the taboo with domestic violence is that society does not want to recognize it as a society issue. Everyone thinks that it's a private issue that happens within a family dynamic or relationship dynamic, and that the general overall government and public should not be involved. And that's very much untrue. Because
would you consider it a public health crisis? It's another public
1000%, because think about it this way. When you have a house or a dynamic where there's domestic violence, let's say it's a family, just for the sake of a family, right? And there's kids in that household, and they're in a household of violence. What do you think those kids do? They grow up and then they go to school and they perpetrate that same violence in school. You know what I mean? So these same dynamics that we think are is only impacting a family does bleed over into our societies, our neighborhoods, our schools, and our communities, and everywhere else. So we cannot just look at it and turn our eyes to it and say, oh my God, that's just happening over there at the Johnson's household. That's not none of our business. No, it's everybody's business. And until we see it that way, I don't think it's really going to pick up enough notoriety and conversations to force government to do better legislation as it pertains to doing things to prevent domestic violence, and then also harsher punishments for perpetrators.
Do you advocate for DV centers to receive more funding?
So that's funny you can talk about that. So that's something that I really want to focus on 2023 is I definitely want to move more into the political realm. I did have a lot of political meetings with our local government officials here in California regarding some really some laws that I see loopholes in that I would like to have addressed within domestic violence. So I've started those conversations, and I'm actually in talks of writing up a couple of laws that will be presented, to legislators to implement within 2023. So I'm very much, and I'm grateful that I have those relationships with our government officials, that they will listen and they will take notice and they will consider. Because this is why I felt that God chose me to walk this path, because he knew that I wouldn't, at some point he knew that I wouldn't be afraid to talk for people that are afraid to talk. And I don't mind sharing my story anymore if it's going to evoke meaningful change. I want to see the laws change, because I understand that I won't be able to change people, but at least I can help to change some laws that will protect people better. And that's what I really want to do.
5 Black women and girls were killed each day in 2020. Again, I'm going to say that 5 Black women and girls were killed each day in 2020. Most of them with guns. Gender violence must be at the center of the gun debate, advocates say. In 2020, a year of rising homicides amid a devastating pandemic in the US, the increase in the death rate for Black women rivaled that of Black men. I had never heard that before. I had never heard Black women, getting killed that often. And, I do read news reports and things.
In the U.S., 4 Black women and girls are killed every day. You actually heard me right there. I said every day. We're only 3 days into the new year, and these are the faces of Black women we've already lost to homicide in 2022. This is obviously a crisis, but oftentimes it doesn't get the attention it deserves, which is...
I think it's like, that's such it's a layered issue. One, we talk about overall what's glorified in our society, right? Especially music, when it comes down to Black people, our culture, we have built our culture off of violence for the most part. When you look at the whole hip hop community, and that thrives our music, everything is about, fuck that bitch, fuck her up, I'm gonna pull out my Glock, I shot such and such. It's both men and women are both. That's what we're glorifying. So then when you get together, you create.
And they all leaning back.
Everybody leaning back, and the girl twerking, and fuck that bitch. This is our music, right? And when you hear these things,
what they call music.
What they call music.
It's not music. It's not music to me anymore.
It's horrible. I don't even like it. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I don't even want to go out, because I don't want nobody to call me a bitch. I'm just saying, because right now, that's just like.
You calling a bitch.
I'm just saying, because back then we had Queen Latifah and shit. You calling a bitch? Ella, we didn't do that. You valued your women. I mean, you did have people who didn't, but overall,
women were way more. They were disrespected occasionally, but they were way more respected publicly than they are now.
1,000%. It just wasn't okay for you to just call a girl a bitch out in public and it just be that without some type of shame, right? Now it is what it is. And we see it all across social media. We see it all across our music platforms. So this is the culture that's being fed to our young people. And then you see, when you come down reality shows, right? It's the same thing. So then when they're getting out into the real world and they're perpetuating relationships, they're mimicking what they hear and what they're seeing. So we're seeing way more violence being created in these relationships with young Black men and young Black women. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with what we're showing them and what we're putting out there in society through our music, through our television, through social media. It's acceptable. And that's the problem. We have made it acceptable.
They celebrate it, they promote it. And I'm not surprised that society has evolved the way it has, especially within the hip hop community, Black culture, because I know, when I was younger, I was at the party that night Biggie got shot and killed. And, sometimes I forget, the first time I experienced a murder or shooting was, I was only 18 years old, so fresh out of high school.
got shot. Keep down, wrap his head. Oh, so she can see. No, Biggie got shot. Oh, Lord, fuck shit. Oh, they kicking. Oh, somebody got shot. Oh, yeah, that was five. Yeah, that was 5 shots fired. Oh, look at that wreck. Y'all, crank up the car, please. I'm ready to go. We have to get out. Security. I wonder why they was running.
But we, there was violence in the community. I remember there was the triple shooting in Pasadena, the Halloween murders.
Yep, remember that.
There was a lot of I put together like a list of, and this is Pasadena, Altadena, LA, different things, places I've been seeing, like dozens of shootings and, crimes and stuff. But you had this culture that was violent back then. Mm-hmm. And so, we had people who were, we saw a lot of violence.
Yeah.
But now, if I had kids, I don't, but you have kids and stuff. Now it would be our kids. It's our kids and who are now having kids. And so our generation, we saw a significant amount of violence and stuff. Yeah. This one, I mean, the violence, I just be like, damn.
It is. And they're getting younger and younger with it too. Have you noticed that?
And everybody's, and yes, they are so, and it's not because I'm getting older. They are so disrespectful. Disrespectful. When I come across like young people and stuff, I just like, scoot away or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely, I'm not weak or whatever.
But we're trying to be out here fighting these little, they're so disrespectful.
Oh, I got certain tools for them.
Yeah, exactly.
I got, it's certain tools that not just for them, it's for anybody. I can't legally carry or whatever, but, and I wouldn't want to or whatever, but there's other ways to restrain people and
100%.
Get them together.
I'm being real with you because I heard about you. I was waiting on you at the door.
I'm not surprised with the amount of violence because it was starting to really, jump off when we were graduating.
Yep, it was. And when we were in school, it was a lot of gang violence. So the violence was really more controlled, like centralized within that community, right? It didn't always so much bleed out into other sectors, unless it was like wrong place, wrong time. But majority of it was like gang violence. Now we're starting to see straight out just violence against people in all kinds of relationships, workplace violence, right? You get mad, you're popping off and you're killing people at work. Somebody make you mad, driving us down the street, all of a sudden you're just going to shoot them. Your girlfriend and boyfriend, I can't be with you.
I'm gonna say this now. Now I don't condone violence per se. Mm. I've dealt with a lot of disrespect throughout my life. Some of it has been because I am a Black person, African American. Some of it was because I was a effeminate boy, a gay male. Some of it has been because I was trans. I never decided to wake up and to respond violently until somebody actually brought something into my safe space and tried to harm me. And so I was able to take their tool, from them and harm them with it. And that's what I'm saying. People are getting what they deserve. Now, I've seen a tremendous amount of bullying throughout my life. Rodney King is a family friend, police brutality, that situation. Even though, he was, leading the police on a high-speed chase, he still didn't deserve to be beat and to be beat with 56 times with a baton and kicked and stomped like that. No one deserves that.
No one.
Now, you have these people at these jobs, do harmful things, just people are very disrespectful. And people do things and think that, oh, she ain't gonna do nothing. He ain't gonna do nothing. He's a punk, she's a punk, whatever. And, I don't want to say people are doing it to the right people.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And you have to realize when a person snaps, it's not just that they decided to wake up today, it's a build up. And people sit around, they sit at their jobs. It doesn't matter if they're police officers, doctors, lawyers, it doesn't matter. I know people in all types of different fields, professional fields. And some of the stories that I hear, it's like they might as well be on a playground with little kids. And they doing because they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
that one person decides to go to
Yep.
work that day and they deal with them how they feel like dealing with them. Is it right? No, it's not right. But you're treating people in a disrespectful manner and you're making them feel some kind of way. And come on, you're not stupid. You know what you're doing.
100%.
So when that person has enough of what you've done, and you know, we're seeing it all on the news and stuff, but then you hear those stories too. The person would say, "Oh, he walked right by me. He did.
Yeah.
It just happened. It just happened at that Walmart. A black boy at the Walmart somewhere. He killed several of his coworkers, and he didn't kill one of his coworkers because one of those coworkers, I believe, if memory serves me correct, one of his coworkers' mother, the person, she had cancer, and his mother was a cancer survivor, and he didn't shoot that person because he knew he felt some kind of connection with her, whatever. People are straight up treating people like, and they know, and they know it. And I never thought I would see so many stories and hear so many.
Welcome back. The city of Chesapeake, Virginia, holding a vigil in honor of the Walmart shooting victims on Monday. This comes as we hear from survivors of that shooting that left 6 people dead. The witnesses were in the break room, or excuse me, the victims were in the break room where police say Andre Bing shot his colleagues before killing himself. And while some survivors said the store manager shot at random, one witness said it appeared he was targeting certain people.
He had the gun pointed at me. And then he went like this and put the gun up. And then he just looked at me and said, "Jesse, go home."
That woman said she believes Bing didn't shoot her because she had just started working in the Walmart just 5 days earlier. This video shows Bing at the store some time ago. Fellow employees described him as a loner. Authorities continue investigating a possible motive and are expected to release more information later today.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Get more great ABC7 content by clicking the subscribe button for our YouTube channel and download the ABC7 Los Angeles streaming app on Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, and Roku to watch on your TV.
You know, I think it goes back to what we said earlier, right? The layers of trauma, because, you know, some of these things have been happening since the beginning of time, right? Workplace harassment.
And can we agree on something? Can we agree on something? Humans do love to get revenge.
Oh yes, of course. I mean, it's a natural thing, right? Like,
and we love a good revenge story.
Yeah, everybody does. Like, I mean, that's a human feeling, right? Anger is a human feeling. You're supposed to have. If you don't feel angry, then you're not human. You know, love is a human feeling. Sadness is a human. Like, we're supposed to have these emotions. Yeah. The issue is that when they come out in a way that's detrimental to not just yourself, but then other people. And the problem with all of this that we're talking about is that everyone that we're speaking of, yes, have had unjustful things that's happened to them, but that unjustful thing was not the thing that made them pop off, like you said, because you don't know what else that person was going through outside of having to come to work every day and deal with you, harassing them, to deal with you, threatening to take their job away because you don't like them, making their workplace living hell. You don't know what they're leaving home to come to work to, and then you're creating an extra layer of trauma that they're experiencing here at work and that they may already be experiencing at home. So it comes back to that whole thing is you don't know who people are and what people are going through. Right. So when you choose to treat someone in an unhumane way or unjustifiable way or bring harm to them, you don't know what the wrath of that is going to look like. Because I do believe the vast majority of Americans are living on edge because of the climate that we're living at in society today. Like we talked about in the beginning, the high cost of living, everybody's struggling to get by every day. So when you're playing with someone's coins, don't play with someone's coins and think you're gonna get away with it.
Don't mess with my purse.
Don't mess with it, because people are barely making it. So when you playing with me, and I'm already 2.5 seconds away from being homeless, if I'm gonna be homeless, maybe I'm just gonna make sure you ain't gonna be here too. I'm just saying that's people's psychological thought patterns right now. You know what I mean?
What's up, big worm?
How much you got left?
Man, I got a lot.
You still ain't sold that weed, Smokey?
And I'm trying to, Worm. Niggas are broke these days.
I don't think you applying yourself, Smokey.
Huh?
You smoking my shit?
Hell no. Fuck with your shit? Hell no.
You smoking my shit?
Now why would I do some shit like that?
I don't wanna have to fuck you up, Smokey. Playing with my money is like playing with my emotions.
Worm. And you the last brother money I mess with. I steal from my mama before I mess with your shit. And you know this, man.
We'll see.
Florida Evans looking motherfucker.
I was on a bus one time in Los Angeles, and matter of fact, it was when I lived in Culver City. I was on the 33 going home. I think I was going home. And I remember specifically, I was sitting in the middle of the bus, and there was a black guy who was in the back of the bus. And he was just getting a little loud and just, you know, I don't know if he was on a phone or what was going on. At some point, I understood that I guess he had lost his daughter. His daughter was murdered or something happened. He lost his daughter. I don't know the situation, but he had lost his daughter and he was grieving his daughter's death. He had a pillowcase. You know what was in that pillowcase?
What?
A shotgun.
Oh my.
He was in the back of the bus. I don't know if he was going to look for some people or whatever, or what he was doing, but he was carrying a shotgun. And all I could think of was for a moment was like, okay, do I tell the bus driver, you know, this guy has a shotgun. He wasn't threatening me. I didn't feel threatened. There was no reason for me to alert the bus driver, because had I alerted the bus driver would have called the police. The police would have came, and I'm sure it probably would have ended up in a shootout.
Yeah. For sure.
Me having been in enough situations that have involved guns and seeing, you know, actual gun violence. One time I was in Hollywood, was across the street from a club on Vine. It was for Hollywood. It was Vine and Hollywood Boulevard. And somebody started just shooting up. I could see the gun, the fire and stuff. One time I was near Pico, and that was like 2003, 2004. One time I was on Pico in Fairfax, walking by a laundromat, had just walked by walking towards the La Cienega area, that had just crossed that McDonald's and had came up on there's a laundromat in the 7-Eleven. A black guy was laid out in there. Blood was everywhere. So I assumed that he was shot. I didn't hear anything, but I would assume that he was shot. One time I was in Dallas, Texas, some black boys, there was a shootout. It was like 10, 15 black guys at a little liquor store. I never went across that street. I was like, wow, you know, they're peaceful and quiet. And the next thing I know, I heard pop, 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 you know, it was a shooting. So a gun necessarily isn't gonna make me feel uncomfortable. You know, I'd have to feel threatened or whatever. So with that situation, just because he had it, and, you know, my cousins and family members had him, but, you know, you're in a public space and he has it, concealed, but knowing that it's a shotgun, and he's upset. He's already angry because he's lost his daughter. You know, you don't know what a person's mind state, and so many people have been hurt, or they have been disrespected, or they have lost things, or they've been treated unfairly, whether it's by family members, whether it's by community members, whether it's by their relationships they've been in, or, you know, don't matter. People have been disrespected, and we are not wired to forget. People say, let it go, get over it, move on. Life doesn't work that way. We are not wired to, and I'm going to even say this, we're not wired to forgive.
No.
We're not wired to forgive.
Yeah.
You know, it is in your best interest at times to forgive, you know, for health reasons and stuff, and to say sanity. But yeah.
Well, that's a whole other thing when I talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is different. It looks different for everybody. And forgive, like you said, does not mean to forget. Those two, you don't ever forget, because whenever you've experienced something traumatic in your life, that's something that now becomes a part of you, right? It becomes a part of you. So forgetting it is not an option. It's now attached to you.
It's not.
So now you have to form a new life with this new thing that's attached to me. And that life is going to look really different than the life that you had before that experience happened to you. And
ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that.
You are new. I don't say you are a new person.
Yeah. You are.
You have this new personality, and you have to adjust to it.
Yes.
And it's not bipolar or whatever. You have to adjust to this to this personality, you know?
This new version of yourself. You do become a new person. You do become a different version of yourself. That old version is gone, and there's now a new version.
Perfectly said.
Yeah, and it's a lot. And then you factor drugs, because we're having a big drug epidemic right now in America. And these new drugs, like back in the day, in our days, we had crack, right? Crackheads didn't hurt you. They may rob you, you take a shit.
Oh no, crackheads hurt you. No.
They didn't go around just kill you. Now we're seeing these people on this, what is this, meth, and they're hallucinating. So they're going around stabbing people. There's so many brutal murders off of people on drugs. They're walking into stores. There was just an incident here in California at the Target down on 7th Street, downtown LA. I don't know if you know that space, but it's very popping in the middle.
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's Target. Like, you know,
that little boy who got stabbed.
And I'm thinking, like, damn, that could be me in the grocery store, my little daughter, and some random ass person. I want to kill you. Like, this is what's happening. So we have so many layered issues that are taking place that is really driving up the our whole violence.
But unfortunately, we live in a culture, you know, and even so much of white culture, American culture has been founded on violence and bloodshed, and it has not stopped. And the media feeds off of it. The media loves it. The media, they don't, there's a saying in the media, if it bleeds, it leads. Meaning if it bleeds, it's going to make leading news.
They have a fascination with it.
They do, a grim fascination with it. And I'm gonna move into saying this. July 2020, American rapper Meg Thee Stallion was shot in the foot by Canadian rapper Tory Lanez. Megan has received tons of backlash and disrespect from the Black community for pressing charges and testifying against Tory Lanez for shooting her. He was recently convicted in a jury trial on 3 felony charges: assault with a semi-automatic handgun, having a loaded and unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and gross negligence in discharging his firearm. In cases like this, why do you think so many in our community are quick to attack Black females versus holding the perpetrators accountable for their crimes against Black women? Why do Black women get vilified and further traumatized and treated like shit when they speak up and seek justice for the harms that Black men or any man has committed against them?
You know why? Because it goes back to that thing that we have with the law, right? The police. It goes back to that whole, what do they call it? Telling when you call, you're ratting out somebody or snitching. It goes back to that mindset that we have. You know, if you think about it, even way back in the days, you know, the police and the law was never something that we welcomed into our lives because of the racism that came along with that, especially as it pertained to Black men, right? So a lot of times, and it still happens a lot today, especially in the DV world, the majority of Black women do not come forth and prosecute on their domestic violence because they don't want to snitch. And they don't want to call the police because we know what happens when we call the police as Black people, right? We know that it can end in a fatality. We know that, you know, nothing good mostly ever happens when we call the police.
Right.
So because that is embedded in our culture and in our brain, even when it's cases where there's violence against women or domestic violence in period, whenever you call the law, you will be frowned upon in our community because we don't deal with things with the law. We like call Pookie and them, get such and such to beat their ass, but don't call the police. That's how we look at it. And it's a catch-22 thing because it's sad that we feel that way because the law does not really work for us the same way that it works for white people or white passing individuals, or hell, I would say anybody who's not Black. It doesn't work the same for them that it works for us. You know what I mean? So that luxury of us calling the police is not something that we feel that we have. So when a woman does do that, even though it's just and is rightfully justified that she does it, is never accepted or supported in our communities because of that reason. Tory Lanez got what he should have gotten, because if you're foolish enough to get mad over, I'm mad because she was talking to such and such, so I'm gonna wave my gun around it. I mean, God, what if it would have hit her in the head? Thank God it was her foot, and that's traumatizing enough.
And tell me this, was she really naked?
I still don't know about that, but that's what they say. And I hate how they brought up her whole sexual history. And that's another thing. Whenever it's violence against women, why do we have to talk about where her vagina was? I'm just asking for a friend. Like, why does that have anything to do with why?
It's her vagina, right?
vagina. Last thing I knew that it was not against the law to give your vagina to wherever you want to give your vagina to.
And I was gonna say whoever she wants to share it with.
I'm just saying that was her business. Like, why was that even a part of the trial? But often and most always when it comes down to women and violence with men, your sexual history is always brought into the courtroom, and that's another reason why victims don't come forth. I mean, these issues are so layered, and until we break them down and restructure them, we're not going to see anything different happen. Now, what I was happy to see was that he was prosecuted. I think that screamed volumes to other guys out here who think that, one, you can get away with your behavior because you have money, you're a celebrity. Two, that you can get away with your behavior because you're a man. And three, that you can give it away with your behavior because it was a Black woman. I think that screams volumes to these men that you need to stop and you need to be careful before you think about perpetrating violence onto any woman, especially even a Black woman. I was very happy that he went to jail, and I feel like that's what he needed. That's what needed to happen to him.
He earned it.
Yeah.
He earned it. So,
and we have breaking news out of Los Angeles tonight. A verdict was just reached in the Tory Lanez trial. The rapper accused of shooting Megan Thee Stallion in the foot. The shooting and trial, of course, drew a lot of attention online with rumors and misinformation that Megan herself called torturous. Nyla Charles has been following this case closely for us and joins us now. Nyla, what are we learning?
Jacob, in LA Superior Court, jury just found Tory Lanez guilty on all 3 felony charges he was facing, including carrying a loaded unregistered firearm in a vehicle, assault with a semi-automatic handgun, and discharging a firearm with gross negligence. This chapter now closed for Megan Thee Stallion, whose attorney is saying, quote, "The jury got it right. I am thankful there is justice for Meg." This comes on the second day of deliberations and after a tumultuous 2 years since the shooting and a trial full of surprises. The Canadian hip-hop star, known for his hit single Say It, was charged with the 2020 shooting of the Grammy-winning rapper, known for her sensual lyrics and bold style. On the stand, Megan said Tory Lanez shot her after telling her to dance. Megan facing intense scrutiny on social media and from hip-hop bloggers questioning her account. Then giving dramatic testimony this week about the harassment she suffered around the case, telling the court, "I don't want to live. I wish he had just shot and killed me if I had to go through this torture." The trial full of surprises. One unexpected turn when Megan's former best friend, Kelsey Harris, testified, recanting her interview with investigators about the incident in which she identified Tory Lanez as the shooter, saying parts of the recorded interview weren't accurate, according to the Associated Press. Jury began deliberations Thursday. In the afternoon, they sent a note to the judge asking for a better definition of the word willfully and on purpose.
Nyla Charles is still with us here. Nyla, of course, you mentioned a guilty verdict came in. I want to know, what is the reaction to this verdict?
Well, Jacob, Jacob, actually, it looks like from the AP reporting there that it's actually very emotional. I spoke to Tory Lanez's attorney last night, and he says him and his client were expecting that Tory Lanez be acquitted on all charges, so it must be a shock. We haven't been able to reach that attorney this evening, but a Los Angeles DA put out a statement highlighting the bravery of Megan Thee Stallion, saying, in part, "You showed incredible courage and vulnerability with your testimony despite repeated and grotesque attacks that you did not deserve. You face unjust and despicable scrutiny that no woman should ever face, and you have been an inspiration to others across LA County and the nation." But there was also some reaction, like I mentioned, inside the courtroom right after the verdict. The AP again reporting from that scene that Lanez's father began shouting after the jury left the courtroom, saying that this wicked system stands judged before God Almighty. He also pointed to the 2 prosecutors and called them evil, wicked people. Because of that, deputies removed him from the courtroom. Jacob?
Thank you for watching Transbrations. You're watching part 3 of Tunisia Offray's interview for Women's History Month. Thank you.